Okay, and action. Welcome to 7 Blue Pixels, where you can unlock the secrets behind the amazing visuals you love in movies, TV shows and more. We'll break down the tools and techniques used by professionals, empowering you to create your own stunning visual effects and motion graphics. My name is Taylor DW, and in today's video we'll be using Cinema 4D and After Effects to make your own Borderlands film style titles. Borderlands game series is finally getting its own film after releasing their first game 15 years ago. Gearbox is still giving us big planets, bigger stories, and even bigger characters. Eli Roth is directing the feature film based on the game, and the titles released in the trailer and the posters is incredibly Borderlands, yet with its own spin away from the games. We'll be using the After Effects for compositing and bringing the animation together. However, the whole effect can be done in After Effects, so without further ado, let's catch a ride! That might have been a bit much. Firstly, what I want to do is talk to you about how we can make a Borderlands title within After Effects, and then we'll go through and we'll bring in our Cinema 4D render and we'll work out how to composite it in the same way that I did for my version. So, I'm going to go up to Composition, New Composition. We're just going to make it HD composition for now. 10 seconds is fine. We can always adjust the timeline afterwards. Okay, so we have it here. I'm going to get some text, and I'm just going to click in the center, and I'm going to call this tutorial. Okay, I'm going to press Control Alt Home to center the anchor point, and then Control Home to align it to the center. Okay, so now I can hold Shift and drag this out to the size that I want. And let's change this back to the text that we had before. So the kerning is too much, so let's sort that out. Go back to -10. And we're roughly back to where we were. So how do we get this where we want? Let's go Layer, New, Camera. And we make sure that we have our 3D camera here. We can lock that into place. We're not really going to touch it. We can open up our 3D effects for our title. We can do the drop down. Okay, if you don't see these, what you can do is you can go to Composition, Composition Settings, 3D Renderer, and you can change it to either Cinema 4D or Advanced 3D. So Cinema 4D, it tells you what you can and can't do, and Advanced 3D tells you what you can and can't do. And you might notice that some settings change down here as well. Okay, so if we get our exclusion depth and let's just whack 50 on there, as you can see, it starts filling out, but all that's happened is that we've made a 3D text. Okay, so let's Control Z, put that back to where it was. Let's get our bevel depth and maybe let's just turn it into 5. So now it's asking what to do with the lights. So we go Layer, New, and we get a new point light. Let's change this to something like red, just so that we can see the difference. And already we can position one up here, and we can get another one down here. And already you can start seeing what we're doing here. We're already building a 3D title. We can then go into further settings down here, and we can change the bevel style. And we can give ourselves back that bevel. We can change it to concave. And as you can see, we get a very slightly different look. So angular gives us a kind of what you'd call maybe a standard or textbook bevel. Concave gives us this kind of little outline here, which is really nice. And we have convex, which just kind of keeps pushing it out and out and out. And that's kind of not what we want. So let's just maybe go concave just for a style thing here. You can also change how the holes in the text are also filled with a bevel as well. Okay, so you can also come down here and you could change the style of it, its reflectivity, you know, its ambience, diffusion, specular intensity, all that kind of good stuff. And you can also, here's a fun trick, if we get this light up top here, we go to light options and we change this to a blue, and let's whack it up a little bit, we can color it using the lights that we have. So if we turn the lights off, we can come over here and we can just add a stroke. And already we can start putting colors on our bevel. And you can start seeing roughly how we get into things. And then we can maybe go layer, new, light. And we could get like a parallel light. And let's make this into maybe like a nice orange. And we can push this, if we go to view, two views, and we can push this back. Okay, so in this view here, we can then rotate this round by grabbing this and pointing it to the back. And already, what we're starting to get, we perhaps turn up the intensity here, we're getting that backlight that we got when we was in Cinema 4D. And if we go into light options, we can increase the intensity quite a lot. And we can ask it to cast shadows. And we can also change between the different things here. And this could work in our favor, especially when we want more of that background to be lit. And then if we put the other lights back on to light the front, already we have a really nice Borderlands styles title. And that's how you make it in After Effects. So let's just name this one just so we can stay all nice and early. After Effects version. So let's bring in our footage, okay? So let's call these renders and let's bring them in. Okay, so we've brought in our renders. And we've gone through and we've interpreted them to 25 frames because After Effects likes to automatically do 30. So we've got our new composition and we're just going to bring this in. So this is the render that I had for the tutorial. I eventually took out the red and doubled up the yellow and pink, or purple I should say. However, what do we do with this now? We exported all that data with AOVs and everything else. What is it that we're doing with this now? So what we need to do first is we need to go to File, and we need to go to Project Settings, Color, OCIO Color Managed. Now you'll get a little warning there, but what this does is that this now starts using the ACES workflow and the ACES color space. And with ACES, we're able to push our renders so much more further. So I'm going to ask it to display an ACES Rec 709 for me. So I know what it's going to look like when I render it in that color space at the end. Already you can see things a little bit darker, but it means that we just have the true information from the render. If I change the color display back, you can see that everything's just super contrasted and it's not very nice. But we can change this to different colors displays that we're going to render out in. For example, if it was going back into visual effects, you might want to just put it back into the raw or the log so that it can be graded afterwards. But we're going to render this straight out from After Effects, so we're going to stick to 709. So what do we do from here? I'm going to bring the Cryptomatte. So for those of you who have not used Cryptomattes before, it is a way to gather masks from your CG data without having to put so much effort into analyzing what it is that you want. It gives you that flexibility to grab what it is you want when you want it. How do we use them? So I'm going to open up FX Console, and FX Console has been a staple of my workflow for such a long time. It is made by Video Copilot, and I think if you're an After Effects user, it is a must-have. It's almost just part of the furniture. So I'm going to bring in a Cryptomatte effect. And now, as you can see, we have all these colors on the screen, and each one of these represents an object within our scene. So I'm going to bring the timeline to the front so I can just get the colors. And as you can see, the S's are represented as the same color. The E's are represented as the same color because Cinema 4D registered them as the same object. Okay, so I'm just going to go through, and with Shift selected, I'm just going to click my letters. And I'm going to come up to here. I'm going to change this to matte only. Okay, I'm just going to turn off the layer. I don't need it anymore. But we're still getting everything here. So how do we fix that? So the way we fix that is this. We go into FX console and we get EXtractoR. And we want to gather what paths we want from this to begin with. So I'm going to use the main beauty path for now. I'm going to bring in a set matte effect. I'm going to put it on the Cryptomatte. Change this to luminance. And as you can see, nothing's happened because we haven't told it to look at the Cryptomatte effect. And now we just have our titles essentially cut out from the particle effects. This is exactly what we're looking for, and we're going to just mark this as titles comp. We're essentially going to get titles comp and duplicate it twice, and we're going to call this particles comp 1. We're going to go down here and particles comp 2. Oh. Make sure everything's uniform, because I know that will annoy someone because it annoyed me. And I'm going to bring these in. And then within these, I'm just going to go into the Cryptomatte, reset it, and ask it to target that. Back into matte only. Turn it off. Come back into here, Cryptomatte 2, reset it, focus on it, focus on those. Matte only, turn it off. If we go back into our main Borderlands title, so we're going to bring that in, go into it, reset it, have it target the red, matte only. Okay, now we have all of these separated into individual files. So within our titles comp, I'm going to go into it. I'm going to duplicate this because it already has our effects up here. And I'm going to focus on the backlight. I'm going to add this to a screen. So as you can see, all we've done is just brighten it a little bit with the screen, but we're going to add a little bit more to that. I'm going to go into here, I'm going to add an exposure effect. And we're just going to bring that up. And we can go to maybe about 5, 6, 7 on this and really just punch in the background there. And this will make sense in a minute because it will give me a concept and idea of how I want that background to look if we haven't already planned it. But I have, so this helps as well. I'm then going to go in and I'm going to add trap code shine from Red Giant. And what this does, as you can already tell, it just pushes a few light rays. I don't know if that's going to be seen through the compression on YouTube, but there's a few light rays coming through there. And I'm just going to change a few things. So I don't want the light rays to come all the way out, so I'm going to change that to 1. I'm just going to make sure there's a little bit of shimmer there. And then the colorize, I'm going to just change this to deep sea. And now you can see, and what it does, it feels like all it's doing is just pushing that background out through the center. And it just gives a little bit more character to our titles. If I turn them off and turn them back on, off, back on. And it just adds something a little bit extra to that. It feels like there's a big exposure behind it, pushing that light through. And what you can also do, if you want to push this further, is I use Trapco's Optical Glow. You can use the After Effects glow or any other kind of glow effect that you prefer. And with this, I'm just going to drop the amount down to 10, but I'm going to double the size. Okay, and you can already see just what that's doing there. And that is looking brilliant to me. I'm just going to put that on stem unmold. And it's just adding so much to it without with. And it's just adding so much to it. I can maybe go into the shine here and drop the ray length to say maybe, 0.4. And yeah, there we go. That's looking great. And that's our titles. So we come back out, we have our titles, and we're dead happy with those. So what do? So we're going to start looking at how to build the background out. So the background is essentially a mixture of stock footage and anything you can really get your hands on, because we're going to layer it and layer it and layer it, and then we're going to put effects on top. So let's call this new composition, and we're going to call it background. Okay. And we're going to go back into our project window here, and we're going to drag background into our main Borderlands tutorial. So we go into background. I've already got some effects, and they have come from Production Crate and Triune. Okay, so Triune also comes from Film Riot. You might know that channel instead. Okay, so I've brought in my footage here. I've got my Triune versions from their Infinity packs, and I have Production Crate from their website in general. And these are great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in all these effects here. And what I'm going to do is one by one, I'm just going to start layering them up. So you could layer these up to your heart's content over and over and over and over. But for the purpose of this tutorial, let's just grab all these, freeze frame, and extend those out. We're happy with what they look and where they are for the purposes of this. So we're going to go in and we're going to grab a fill. And already you can start seeing what we're doing. We're going to copy and paste this across all of them. But on every single one, we're just going to go in and we're just going to mix up the colors based on what it is that we're looking for. Okay, so maybe this green instead we go blue. So you can keep layering these up how you want. It's entirely up to you. But let's pre-compose these, and we're going to call it splat. And then we're going to add a radial blur. We're going to change the type to zoom, and we're going to whack the amount to something like 190. So it's almost indecipherable. But already we have what looks like a bizarre Borderlands style thing. Okay. So we're just going to turn that off for now, and we're going to build out the additional assets. And these additional assets are what really help it blend together. So we're going to bring these in, and you can layer these how you want. Okay, so as you can see, they're all different time specs, right? But for the purposes of this, we're just going to use these for the time being. So I'm going to effectively change them all to screen, apart from the dust patterns and the energy leak 5. Just because I feel that they work slightly better on add. And then with these, I'm going to go in with a curves. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the reds. And I'm going to boost the red channel up, really nice and high. I'm going to go into the blues. I'm going to drop the blue channel down. So they're proper bright orange, reds, pinks, etc. Okay. If we turn the splat back on now, and we do a little bit of a quick RAM preview. So perfect, as you can see, it's all starting to come together. So you could obviously offset these so they're already on screen to begin with, but you can layer them however you want, bring in more effects, any of your own stock. It's all about just adding texture and development to that background layer. It's entirely up to you what you want to do, but going through exactly what I did would kind of be out the scope of this style of tutorial, because it's more about how you can do it and how you would generate it with your own style. So, now that we're happy with the background, we've got our titles and we've got our fluid effects here. What I might do is I have an effect called RSMB, and what it essentially does is that it adds motion blur to an effect. So I'm just going to add it to all of these. And what it does is that if we isolate one, you can see it's just adding motion blur as it moves. And it just helps with it. And that way we don't have to render it, because now we can control the motion blur. But already this is looking really nice. It's looking insane. It's looking chaotic. It's looking Borderlands. And that's what we want. What I also did in mine is that I went up to a new solid and I called this Flares. And I use Video Copilot's Optical Flares because for me it still has been standing the test of time. So we're in Optical Flares and we have our flare here, but it's just definitely in the way. There's no argument about that. It's not really blending into anything. So how do we get it interacting with our scene? So what I did was that I put some positioning keyframes on it and some brightness keyframe on it because I knew how I wanted the whole thing to animate. I wanted to animate out. However, again, we're just looking at style approach in this tutorial. Okay, so if I open up the foreground layers here, okay, foreground layers here, and I open up source layer, it goes titles comp. And I've made sure it's on effects and masks. And if I come underneath it, as you can see, it's getting obscured by where it's being shown and where it's not being shown. Okay? And that's working really well because now we're able to kind of develop a little bit of a style with it. We can also animate it, which works really well for us. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of an orange glow here. And you can then go into the options and change it how you want, but I'm just going to bring down the brightness. So obviously I had like a wide flare, but you could animate that how you want and animate that flare so it can kind of go off and then come on as part of the going on transition. You can increase the scale, however it is that you want to do. But the flares work really nicely with this. So another thing I did just to add an enhancement to this was that I brought in more stock footage and I brought in all these blood bursts from Video Copilot's Action Essentials, which I've had for many years now. And they have all these blood bursts, okay? So if we just have a look at them, they're just absolutely bizarre things, right? And we go blood hits, you know, and they're just absolutely bizarre little things. But they work really well with enhancing what we're doing, especially these blood bursts. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of these blood bursts. I'm going to bring them in, drop them in front of the background, but below the titles. Solo the titles and the blood bursts. And what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to get all these and maybe let's color code them green just so we can see what we're doing here. And what I did was just put them behind. Okay? And just change the direction. And now if we do a quick RAM preview, already you can see how that emphasizes certain things, and you could kind of go in, duplicate them maybe, and then start offsetting them all over the place. And you could probably do these ones down here as well. And now you have something so chaotic. And then when you're happy with everything, you can just get your Borderlands tutorial, make a new comp with it. I added a camera shake, so I used the camera shake effect from Red Giant, but what you can do instead, if you wanted to, let's just use these first 3 seconds for the time being. What you can do if you wanted to is you could just put an extreme wiggle effect on here. So let's go wiggle, just for argument's sake. Okay, let's put that to auto just so we can get a quicker RAM preview. And you could use that as your kind of initial camera shake, however you want to do it. And then what I also did on top of that was that I got an adjustment layer, curves, and I just put a slight S curve on it just to really punch those colors. I'm not sure if YouTube compression will show that, but it just really punches them a bit. And then I put an exposure layer on it and just changed it to 1 and just added a little bit of brightness back and just got some of that details back. On top of that, I then got a new adjustment layer and I added some looks on that, but that's up to taste and you could do that however you want, however you color grade. But another thing I did was that I put a CC vignette on here. And I increased it to 200 and the angle of view to 70. And then what I did was I changed it. And then what I did was I just decreased the opacity. And so all it's done is put a soft vignette in there. We could probably draw that as 50. And it's just a soft vignette. But it adds a little bit of focus back to the center. And so when you're happy with everything, let's render out in a ACES color space. Because if we render out now, and we click on our settings, and we go up to color, it's just rendering out as ACES CG. So what that's going to render out is that. And that's just not what we want. We just spent ages trying to get everything looking right and exactly how we want it. And it's just not going to be where we want it to be. So we need to control that. So we go into our settings. We go to color. And this works for any settings that you've got going on. We go into color. And we're going to change this to output Rec 709. And this effectively renders out whatever it is that you're seeing with the display color space. And that's it. You've made your own Borderlands film style titles. Please comment if you have any questions or you want me to do something else in the future. Thank you for joining. Hit that notification bell and I will see you all soon.